Once again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ryan Collins-Swartz. I work here at Tapestry Community Capital. We're going to get started in just 1 to 2 minutes. We've received a few notes from people that they're logging in and will be joining us very shortly. So hang tight, and I look forward to sharing more about our BondCamp program with you. Okay, wonderful. Now that the room is really filling up, we're going to get started with our webinar. Already getting some very nice messages from attendees, so that's very much appreciated. Welcome. My name is Ryan Collins-Swartz once again. I'm the Social Impact Manager here at Tapestry Community Capital. Who are we? What do we do? We'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute, but we're here to give some more information and answer some questions about our BondCamp program that we're going to be launching and getting started on this January. We're a nonprofit co-op. We've worked for the past 20 years with other nonprofit groups, helping them with their financing. We really believe that your greatest asset is your community. It's your community of supporters, the people who benefit from your organization, who respect your organization. And typically a lot of traditional financial institutions might look differently at nonprofits, social enterprises, charities, and co-ops. We work with groups to engage their community of supporters and engage them as investors. So with the increase in social enterprise and a lot of different interests in moving away from typical donation models where people are tired of being asked to give money, we work to engage your group of supporters. Who is Tapestry? We were founded about 20 years ago by TREC, the Toronto Renewable Energy Cooperative. For the past 20 years, we've been raising community investment to finance projects that have community benefit and benefit for the environment. Since 2004, we've been raising community investment for these types of campaigns. In total, we've supported 13 different campaigns spanning across environmental and social enterprise sectors, and that's raised about $55 million in bonds. So in community bonds, investment from people in Ontario looking to make a difference in their own backyard. And now, with launching Tapestry, we work to support nonprofits, co-ops, and charities in doing the exact same, in raising community bonds to implement these really meaningful capital projects. So big projects that require a lot of financing, typically involve real estate or a fixed asset. We work to help you gain your community support in form of investment to bring your vision to life. What are these community bonds? If you haven't heard of community bonds, they're an amazing financial tool that can be used by nonprofits, charities, and co-ops to engage your community of supporters as investors. They're a proven social finance tool. They've been around for many, many years and used by co-ops and credit unions to raise money. But in the past 15 years, they've been used by a lot of nonprofits, charities, and co-ops. They can only be issued by co-ops, nonprofits, and charities. It's basically like a low-interest loan that you issue to your community of supporters. It's issued in the name of your organization. So let's say, for example, the Sudbury Solar Co-op bond, not in the name of Tapestry. And it's an interest-bearing loan. So it's not a donation, it's a loan that has a low interest rate over a long period of time that you do have to pay back. And we like to say that if you take a conventional bond, so it's just Remembrance Day yesterday, let's think about those victory bonds that were launched in 1916, I believe so, and you add in a social return, you get a community bond. At Tapestry, we help groups do the same. It's important to note that when implementing these big projects with community investment, 3 important things. That community bonds work in combination with other sources of financing. So let's say maybe a loan from a foundation or from your local bank, from your credit union, sometimes some equity as well from the organization. And although community bonds are very powerful, they typically contribute about 20 to 40% of the overall project financing. So let's say you are in Owen Sound and you're building an affordable housing development. It's going to cost you, let's say, $5 million. It would be appropriate to raise, let's say, about $1 to $2 million in community bonds to contribute to the financing. And the last point is that bonds are raised in relation to when you need the money. So when you have to pay interest, you don't want to be raising the bond before you need to actually spend that capital. When we work with organizations, let's say, for example, this affordable housing development in Owen Sound, it might be a $5 million total project to build this affordable housing development. But let's say only $1 million is needed up front for the down payment on the building. Then in 12 months, there might be another $2 million needed to do a major phase of construction. There might be then a year later, another $2 million needed to do the final retrofitting and closing of the property. All of these things are important to note when we're thinking about financing your social project. So that brings us to Bond Camp. Over the past year, we've been traveling across Ontario and working with a lot of groups who had these iconic projects, who are looking to finance them with community bonds and who wanted to get started. When looking at the screen, we saw 5 major areas where help was needed to get to the point where these nonprofits, co-ops, and charities were ready to get started and actually start building their big iconic project. So in areas of project feasibility, business planning, financial modeling, understanding potential investors and financiers. When there comes to a real estate project, we saw that there's a lot of need for upfront financing for soft costs, perhaps in working with a real estate agent or appraiser, or doing construction planning, getting support with zoning, or working with an architect, getting architectural renderings, perhaps getting help with some legal or accounting work. We wanted to create Bond Camp to support nonprofits with any type of pre-work that's needed before they were to launch their capital campaign and use community bonds. So if you've ever taken, let's say, a boot camp for your health, let's say after Christmas time, for me, I ate a lot of macaroni and cheese from my grandmother last Christmas, and I needed to do a little bit of a fitness boot camp in January. We want nonprofits, co-ops, and charities to do a Bond Camp in the new year to work on all of the little things that will get you over the top to take on investment and build that iconic project that your community needs. For one, you're going to know your resource gaps. You're going to submit an application, see where you need help. We're going to look at finding your target investors, thinking about who is going to come to the table to finance and lend to your project. And finally, when you realize this project and you start building it, you're going to be a community champion, a leader in your community. I'm sure you are an amazing community champion already. The outcomes of this Bond Camp program is that organizations who go through it will improve their investment readiness by first testing their business model and revenue assumptions, By that, we want to make sure that if you were going to build this project, you would be confident in your ability to generate revenue and repay investors and lenders, whether it's a community bondholder or a bank. We want you to be very clear and get support on defining the project costs. So how much money you need, moving from that idea of, let's say, the Owen Sound Group saying we need 5 million to say, actually, we've done all our work and it's actually going to cost 6.5 million. You're going to have assembled your project team and your campaign team, looking at who you need, different partners. We're going to give you the tools and the support to get buy-in from your organization's board and other management. And we're going to conduct some due diligence on the project around payback, around feasibility, and just to give the comfort to say that this is an all right idea and let's go full steam ahead. We've had a tremendous amount of interest in BondCamp, a lot of excitement. We want to give a little bit of clarity over who BondCamp is truly right for. It has to be an Ontario-based nonprofit, co-op, or charity that has an upcoming project that involves real estate or a fixed asset. You have to be raising, and the project has to be requiring more than $1 million in total financing. And you should have some kind of interest in using community bonds to help finance this project to the tune of about $500,000. If your project is financially viable and it has a revenue model, so again, you're confident you're going to be able to repay investors through a revenue model, not through a grant model in the future. Secondly, or second to lastly, if the project is truly iconic, it's meaningful to your community, and it's going to get people excited and motivated to help invest and build it. And lastly, if your project on a whole you feel is investable, if it's going to be an attractive investment to your community of supporters. Some more details, again, we're going to have Q&A at the end, so happy to touch on more of these things in greater detail. There are many types of potential projects. I want to run through 6 potential buckets or sectors where we can see BondCamp projects existing in, but there are many more that don't exactly fall between these categories. Arts and culture venues like arts hubs, theaters, music venues, movie theaters, community hubs, maybe potentially social service hubs, co-working spaces, incubators, sustainable food and farming, anywhere from farmland to agriculture to food hubs, sustainable and renewable energy, could be community-led renewable energy projects, and lastly, affordable supportive housing, any type of affordable housing, supportive housing, nonprofit housing, housing for youth, housing for those with disabilities, housing for in a co-housing model, all are potential projects of BondCamp. Fundamentally, BondCamp is a way to take the already strong network of supporters that you have and gain the tools and the tricks and the templates to move these groups into being investors in your organization. Let's run through a short timeline to give an idea of where we're moving here. Again, we've had our applications open, and the first stage is we're taking in general expressions of interest. On November 16th, this Friday, our expression of interest field closes. It's open to all nonprofits, charities, and co-ops from across Ontario. If you meet the eligibility criteria, you fill out this expression of interest about your capital project. It should take no more than 20 minutes to complete. If you're deemed eligible, a Tapestry team member will be in touch, and we're going to work with you to complete a final application for December 1st. We're going to have an independent review committee assess the applicants, and on December 15th, we're going to announce the successful recipients of the funding. You're going to be notified of your approval and the exact funding total. It could be up to $10,000. And again, you'll work with a member of the Tapestry team to finalize your project timeline. So we're going to decide on when the disbursements of those funds will be and when exactly you'll need what type of support. From January to March, we'll be running the Bond Camp program. The funds will be dispersed. Our investment readiness work will begin. And at the end of March, the program will conclude. Tapestry will do an assessment of your project. We'll conduct a community bond workshop with your team, and we'll give a final recommendation on your next steps for your capital project. All in all, a really strong way to spend the new part of 2019 making your project and your organization more investment ready, helping bring that project to life. That's all from my end in terms of this presentation. I'd love to take your questions, comments, and have a discussion for the next 15 minutes or so on different areas of Bond Camp. And if you have any other questions that come to mind, you can get in touch. My email is below, along with my phone number. Thank you so much. If you do have a question, you can now post it in the attendee chat function. Okay, we have a few coming in. I'm just going to wait for a couple more and decide which one to answer first. Wonderful. First question we have here from Cynthia. She asks, Bond Camp looks amazing. Can you give an example of a past project that Tapestry has worked to finance with community bonds? That's a great question, Cynthia. Thanks so much for asking. When we talk about nonprofit real estate that would be most similar to Bond Camp, I would point you in the direction of the Center for Social Innovation, which is a nonprofit co-working space that is based in Toronto and has a location as well, a satellite location in London, Ontario, and one in New York City. They were leasing their space that they were then renting out to different nonprofits and social entrepreneurs. They then wanted to have this big dream to then purchase their space, own their building, own an asset instead of paying rent. And we've worked with them on 2 occasions to raise community bonds. The first time, $2 million to purchase a $7 million building. And the second time, just under $5 million to purchase and renovate a $16 million property. So these are just one example of a nonprofit that had a revenue model that was able to go from leasing to owning. Great question. Stephanie asks, how must the funding be spent? Are there any restrictions on who the funds can be spent with? It's a good question as well. Bond Camp, we understand as we worked on these projects before that these types of projects require flexibility. So we're very flexible in terms of the way that the funds can be spent. In your final application, you'll create a budget for your project and the needs that you have to get support from Tapestry and our funding. And we'll work with you to decide what your most suitable and most pressing needs are as an organization. So before you receive your funding announcement, we'll have scoped how the funds will be spent. There's no restriction on matching funds or on spending the funds with the specific group. Thanks a lot. A couple more questions, one more from Cynthia. So anyone else who's attending and who has any other questions, feel free to ask as well. Cynthia again wants to know if the funds can be used to do architectural renderings. Yes, definitely. So something that's important about gaining either investment into your project or any other support is that people in your community really want to see what it looks like. So it can be used on architectural renderings or anything to visualize what that final project looks like. Another question from Beth. Beth asks if Tapestry has recommendations of different providers to support project implementation. Could you clarify that just a little bit, please? Do you mean, could we recommend, let's say, a nonprofit real estate agent we've worked with or an architect? You say yes. Yes, we definitely can if that's something that you're interested in. We have a network or different consultants or experts in these types of project development that we could match you with. And you would conduct those interviews on your own and decide who's best to work with your organization. Terrific. We have time for, let's say, a few more questions. Beth, again, thanks for your question. Beth says, I'm in the very early stages of starting my project. The project might not be completed for 2 years. Can the funds go to making a business plan? Beth, it's a good question. We'd say it depends. We'd have to have that discussion after submitting your expression of interest. We want to have the capital raised for your project starting in the next year. Ideally, some of the funding goes towards project feasibility. You might already want to have an early business plan for your project, although it doesn't have to be in like a perfect stage. So in that case, you might be able to work with BondCamp and get support to finalize your business plan. And that's something that I think you should, we can talk over email and discuss that a little bit more. What is the time commitment, Andrew wants to know, for BondCamp? It's a good question. So we know that as an organization, time and commitment is difficult. There are 2 major half days that you have to complete for BondCamp. There's a half day that's done with Tapestry at the beginning of the program that's run between January 15th and February 15th. There's then a closing process, which is another half day with Tapestry. In that session, we review your progress and the deliverables, and we give some recommendations to move your project forward. And in the meantime, there are no specific time constraints on BondCamp. So there aren't mandatory webinars or sessions. It's really these 2 workshops and then the funding to get the support that you need between those 3 months. Do we know another question, do we know any consultants in Southwestern Ontario? Yes, we do. Please send me an email, and there are many amazing nonprofit supporters in Southwestern Ontario. Terrific. Okay, well, I'll wait for, let's say, another 20 seconds for a final question. And if not, my contact information is available here. Thank you all so much for joining this afternoon. And we'll be, okay, one more question. Our project requires us to register, be a registered Canadian charity. Can another nonprofit host or sponsor application for BondCamp while we work towards charity registration? It's a good question, Lee. I would say yes. Perhaps we can discuss a little bit more about email, but that's certainly a possibility. We've had organizations in the past begin under one structure and move towards another. depending on if you're looking to raise the funds and implement your project within the next year to 2 years, we can definitely work within those constraints. It's a good question. Okay, well, that 20-second countdown was helpful in getting a final question. So I'll give another, let's say, 30-second countdown and say thank you once again. Once again, my email is below. We thank you for your interest in BondCamp. If you feel that BondCamp isn't for you at this time and want to get some more information on community bonds or on social, nonprofit, co-op, charity, real estate projects, please get in touch. Our email inbox and our telephones are always open to speak with you more. Thank you and have a good week.